Hi, this is Catherine Scott for drillingcontractor.org. I'm here with John Tustin, Operations Director for Competence Solutions with Petrofac. John gave a presentation this morning at the 2013 IADC HSCT Conference and Exhibition in Houston, Texas. Thanks for joining us today, John.
Thank you, Catherine. Really pleased to be here.
So in John's presentation, he talked about competency. John, first let's, talk about the definition of competency. Can you tell us what that is from your perspective?
Okay, there are many definitions of competency around the world. You can go to any dictionary and choose the word competency or competency. For me, it means around the knowledge that a person has when they're carrying out a job and their ability when they're performing that job. So for me, it's about the knowledge and the skills they have. But the skills they have, they bring to the workplace. For example, like an electrician, that's their vocation. So a vocationally qualified electrician brings that vocation into the workplace. We don't assess that vocation, we assess how they apply that knowledge and that skill into the workplace. So we look at how they perform. So for me it comes around about knowledge, skills and experience and ability. And experience is something that a person may have, and I may have 30 years experience in my profession, but it doesn't mean I'm any more competent in my job than you are, who has 5 years worth of experience in your profession. Because for me, things move on, technology moves on, so experience has to be taken in the round and taken to the assessment process when you're looking at someone's competency.
Okay, and you also said in your presentation that competency is an end-to-end process. Can you kind of elaborate on that point?
Okay. The process is around the assessment. So it starts off with a job role, and that job role is allocated to a person. We define then for competency the profile they have, the competency profile that goes with that job, and that profile is a set of competencies such as permit to work or drilling operations, and those competencies are written specifically for that role in that unit and that element, and they're built from standards like the KSAs that IADC are developing, and they're built also from regulatory standards or wider company standards. So the profile is built up from a whole series of standards, and it defines the role competency profile. From that profile, that person then is allocated to that role, and then that profile is applied to them. And in the workplace, we allocate typically trained assessors who assess that person carrying out that job or job task in their workplace. So an assessor, typically someone that's qualified, can be an internal assessor, can be an external assessor that's brought into the company, will observe that person carrying out that job task. When they're assessing them, they'll be looking at how they perform, so how they're carrying out the job. So, for example, how are you interviewing me? And what knowledge do you have as a presenter will be brought into the equation as well. So they're heavily focused on the standard for that role, the standard for that task, assessing them, and at the end of that assessment, they will make a judgment. That judgment could be that I deem that you are competent in that work task, or not yet competent. Whatever the outcome is, the assessor gives feedback to the candidate. So when the candidate gets the feedback, they are given the feedback that you are competent for these reasons, or however, in this instance, I judge you not to be competent. And in that case, they're given feedback and quite often given coaching around how they should improve, which goes into their personal development plan. At the end of that assessment, that's recorded, usually recorded in an information system, and after that point, they take into account verification. So the process at the end starts with the job role holder and ends with verification. And at verification, there can be an internal verifier who looks at how the assessment took place and then goes back through the paperwork to make sure that the assessors in that environment, on that rig, are applying the same consistent assessment techniques across the whole piece. So it ends with verification, and that's important, such as organisations such as IADC that accredit a process for competency. They usually start off with the external verification. So for instance, how is Catherine assessed as being competent? They're working their way back, all the way through the assessment process, the paperwork, and right back to what that meant for the job role.
Okay, so then if you're looking at the assessment, how do you actually determine, based on competency performance, whether or not a person is competent?
Okay, so you'll break a job task down into interviewing, for example. So I'd be assessing you, interviewing me. I would break down that into what knowledge must you have. So the knowledge you must have as an interviewer is around the fact that you have to be aware of prepare the questions. So How did you prepare the questions? Do you understand questioning techniques, listening techniques, interviewing skills, knowledge about how the cameraman works? And then I'll be observing you, interviewing me, as you are now, around how you're performing your job. So I'd expect you to be smiling, as you are, to be engaging, and then how you perform, are you performing to the standard of that? So that is how I would check you and assess you in your workplace around your knowledge and how you perform, and you're doing a fantastic job.
Well, thank you so much, John. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Catherine Scott for drillingcontractor.org.